Hello, this is Tom from anti-proton.com, and as you can see I have a Geiger counter pointed at the wall where I'm reading 17 counts per minute, maybe a little more, 20 counts per minute. Well anyway, 21 counts per minute. As you can see, my brick wall is quite radioactive. No, not really quite radioactive, that's not true. It's somewhat radioactive, a little bit, because it contains natural thorium ore. I thought I would talk to you a little bit today. Well, pretty much reply to Sakura in Japan, who has reservations about her daughter because she lives in Japan, and apparently there's, 3 meltdowns there, which is a good enough reason to be concerned about anything. So I'm kind of walking around with my Geiger counter here outside here in Virginia in the States to give you an idea. As you can see, I'm at 25 counts per minute moving along. First off, let me talk about a few of the things that you were talking about. I do have a little bit of an idea what you mean, just a little tiny bit, about the fear about what you're eating and what you're drinking. Can I grab that from you for a second there? Alright, my wife's walking along with me because you hold this, the device. Just don't drop it. Alright, look at this. I received a notice, ironically, in the door today. Talk about luck. From the town that I live in. According to the town, I've had too much, coliform bacteria in the water. And coliform bacteria, as anybody knows, involves a family of little tiny cylindrical bacteria, including E. coli, which is a member of the family. And there's a decent possibility that's what they're talking about, but of course, nobody wants to use the term E. coli. It would be analogous to saying to you in Japan that instead of being exposed to, gamma, that you're being exposed to photons, because gamma, of course, are photons. So anyway, you get the point. I'm apparently drinking E. coli. Good for me. So that was displeasing. Anyhow. Yeah, my wife has been getting sick randomly off of the water. Go figure. Of course, there's no way to ever attribute that. Notice I'm down to 15. I'm glad to see that you got the background readings, but as you noticed already, the background readings are misleading. They can be different wherever you go. Notice I'm at 12. My house is about 14, give or take. But as I can get up to 30 off of my brick. Now, your idea of sampling your food, let me switch hands here. Sampling your food, or rather your child's food, is a good idea, but using your technique of going and finding where the food comes from and then finding what the official source is, the official readings are, is probably the smartest approach. You can sample your food. Let's see where we are now, 25. You can sample your food, but it's difficult to do. It's very difficult to do without a scintillator. You can do it with a scintillator, but most people don't have $7,000 or $8,000 to drop on a scintillator. So, and it's nice to take your sand to the university and they might do it for you, but they're not going to test all your food all the time. So doing your research, finding where the food comes from, is probably the smartest idea. If you're living in the United States, I wouldn't worry so much about it because there's not very much, not very much contamination over here. I mean, there is contamination, don't get me wrong, but not like Japan. Of course, Japan is always going to have much more contamination because that's where it happened. And there it might be a smart idea to do what you're doing. Now, by the way, if I sound a little exhausted, I'm walking at a pretty fast pace, so I'm like... Anyway, let's see, we're at 14 again, which is good. So as you see, the readings go all over the place. And look, there's a little kitty. Hello, kitty. Oops, kitty leash. Alright, no problem. Alrighty, that's a fun little cat. So the reading is now at 7. Oh my god, that dropped. Wow. The readings go all over the place when you're walking around. That's why you have to run them in a specific place for a specific period of time to get an average. Now, as for what you're breathing in and what you're taking in, ingested radiation is always the worst. The stuff that gets into, well, not ingested, excuse me. Radiation that gets into your system is much more troublesome than the stuff on the outside of your system. We're still at 7, at 6. It's a very low area right here. Anyway, basically put, radiation that comes in the form of particles, particulate radiation, can be swallowed or inhaled or into the bloodstream. The bloodstream is somewhat bad. Breathed in is probably the worst because it gets in your lungs. Ingested is not so bad if it gets into your food, like into your actual intestinal system and into your stomach and your gastrointestinal system. And the reason for that is because it passes through. A lot of it does. Some of it will get lodged in you, like strontium-90 goes for your bones. The reason is because strontium-90 acts like calcium. Your body takes it in and says, oh look, it's calcium, sort of, and it uses it to make bones, and of course that's bad, obviously. My God. What the hell is so radioactive around my house? It's like 9 right here, but it's 14. This is an old car. Kind of amusing if it had anything on it, but I'm not picking up anything from it. Okay, we're at 11. Apparently where I just walked is the place to live, because the samples are so low. Anyway, of course I'm pointing this at the sky, which is kind of a dumb thing for me to do, because that means I'm going to pick up background radiation from the sky much more easily than if I didn't. Now 22 counts per minute is not very high if your background is already in the 40 range. What that tells me is that the sand itself is probably blocking some of the radiation that you're getting from the ground normally. And that's perfectly normal to find scenarios like that. I wouldn't agree with the person who took your readings that 22 should just be ignored as if it's nothing. But it should be taken into respect with how much you get normally. If you can con that person into coming back to your house and testing some more, what you might do is have them test a couple areas. Run their Geiger counter for about an hour in 2 or 3 areas. Test maybe the ground outside of your house, like the grass. Then test maybe a table in the middle of your house that's not near anything that's glass or ceramic, just a random table. Then maybe, that's another good place to test. Maybe test your car too, a couple random places, and just see what kind of readings you're getting. And then what you can do is average them out. Your math was not wrong. Using microsieverts per hour is when you don't know what the source is. That's a problem. But still, it can be used because the levels you get from point A and point B and point C, even if they're used in the wrong measurements, are the same, right? Like if you took a ruler that was in centimeters, but you thought it was in inches, and you measured 10 centimeters, then you took the same ruler to a store to buy something using that measurement. The measurement's wrong, but the measurement you took on it's still the same. You see what I mean? So, technically speaking, you can get away with using microsieverts if you like. I still would suggest counts per minute like what I'm using right this moment. There we go. I've got a bug in my face. We're up to 22. Same as apparently Japanese sandboxes. It smells kind of like a fart over here. I wonder what that is. Probably hydrogen sulfate, most likely coming out of something. Whew. That or a elephant busted. Well, anyhow, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but can consider this for a moment. Radiation has existed for a long time. It's been everywhere. Japan has been struck 2 times by nuclear weapons, once in Nagasaki, once in Hiroshima. And both of those deposited most of the same decay products that you're seeing now from the reactor because they use the same basic reaction. Both of them deposited uranium-238, uranium-235, uranium-234, I think it is off the top of my head. Both of them would have deposited cesium-134, 137, iodine 131, iodine 130 something or other, I can't remember the more stable version. Yeah, so that's perfectly normal to find stuff like that with a scintillator in Japan anyway because of its history. And that doesn't make that any worse for anything, if you like. Your body can handle a lot of this stuff to a small degree. Cells that are exposed to radiation that are damaged by it, if the DNA in the cell is damaged, they will not necessarily mutate. Most of them will die, which is good. You want you want damaged cells to die, because then they just get replaced. Occasionally, cells will mutate to the point where they don't know how to die and they keep living, kind of like, zombie cells, if you like. I mean, they're alive, but they're out of control. And when that happens, they have little telomeres on the ends of them that tell them to die at a certain period of time. By the way, our reading is at 18 counts per minute. Perfectly safe. cells that do not stop dividing because their telomeres do not end then become malignant. Malignant cells are then identified and killed by T cells in your body. So your reading's at 17 counts per minute. Just went up. And then that's when you have cancer. Your body's usually really good at getting rid of this because it gets thousands of little mutations a day and either corrects or destroys the cells that do it. Perfectly normal. The problem is if you exceed your body's ability to handle those kinds of things. Anyway, you were talking about becquerels, the limit of 200 becquerels versus 2,000 becquerels. A becquerel is equal to 1 nuclear decay per second. By the way, we're at 11 counts per minute. So 2,000 becquerels in your food per kilogram is equal to 2,000 nuclear decays per second per kilogram. So that's a pretty small amount, technically speaking, of radiation in your food. You're going to find becquerels worth of radiation in all food, pretty much period. It's almost impossible to find food that doesn't have anything radioactive in it. I'd have to look up and tell you what the becquerel amount is on potassium salt that you buy at the store, but it's pretty decent. Anyhow, let's see, what else have I forgotten to address? What else have I forgotten to address? The iodine is probably just about gone by now. Iodine has a half-life of about 8 days, so after 56 days, it's halved enough time that it's dropped below 1%. So anyway, of course the cesium and strontium and such will be there for a really long time, like hundreds of years. One of the things that a lot of people have trouble dealing with is the fact that there's not a lot you can do. So once you detect the radiation, what can you do about it? There's not a lot you can do. Even if you came back to the States, some of that stuff has still come here too, and some of it's still in our food as well. Not as much, mind you. But to a degree, human beings have been living with this for a long time. Cigarette smoking, for example, increases your chances of cancer probably about the same as being exposed to the very small amounts that you're being exposed to right now. Like if your child picks up secondhand cigarette smoke, for example, they're probably under a similar amount of danger than being exposed to minute amounts of cesium, for example, from the event. Now, if you were actually in the town that's nearby, what is it called, Sendai, I believe, that one that's nearby Fukashima, that's different. You're being probably exposed to more at that point. See, I'm down to 8. The sun has dropped below the horizon at this point, or almost below the horizon. That's probably why this dropped. The sun contributes pretty heavily to this number right here. Take your readings at night, by the way, if you want to get a good feel for what might actually be there. But anyhow, chemicals, for example, are incredible producers of cancer, carcinogens. If you get a lot of chemicals in your food, you can actually cause your probability of getting cancer to increase. So a lot of people will freak out at radiation, but then they'll say, I don't care about, weird chemicals in my food. I don't care about that. I care about the radiation. Well, they're doing the same thing. They're causing cancer. And that's something a lot of people don't take into account. If you really want to protect your child, make sure that nothing weird is getting in their food like chemicals. Make sure you don't smoke around them if you do smoke. Make sure they eat a healthy diet that's high in vitamins and antioxidants. Don't overdo it, by the way. Just a nice normal diet that's rich in antioxidants will be a lot of protection for them. Because I don't know where you live, but it doesn't sound to me like you're getting any kind of, large dose, like an acute dose or anything. If you're down in the, 30 to 40 counts per minute range, although your background at 46 sounds a little high, unless you're up high. Most of Japan, I hear, is pretty low to the water, except for the mountainous parts. And if you're in the low to the water part, like you're only at maybe a couple hundred feet from sea level, you shouldn't be getting 40 or 50 counts per minute, unless your ground is naturally a little bit radioactive, which it could be. It could, oh my god, 5? It's pretty low. It could contain like thorium or something. There's lots of places around in the United States that contain thorium in the dirt. It's pretty normal. So I'm trying to give you a feel right here for the kind of readings that are relatively normal to find. Going to the PTA meeting and bringing it up, probably not a bad idea. If you do, you should go there and talk about the sources of food. I wouldn't worry as much about the dirt that you're around, because you're going to be exposed to that no matter what you do anyway. If it's in the dirt, it's going to get into the air. Looking at the food is probably the most important thing, and questioning where it comes from, and suggesting that perhaps they should be more conservative on what they allow than the 2,000 becquerel limit. But anyway, that would probably be a good idea, and probably be more fruitful than worrying so much about the dirt. Though, don't get me wrong, the dirt probably does contain small amounts of radiation, but everywhere you go, you're going to find it, including in the United States. My dirt here, for example, probably contains some. Let's see. Oops, let me point this at the ground. Am I getting any? There you go. Little. Wait a minute, there's a piece of brick right there that could be setting off my Geiger counter. Alright, I better run upstairs. I took the keys to the house with my wife and I went walking, and she didn't bring her set, so she's like stuck out here until I finish yapping. So anyway, that'll hopefully give you a decent idea. Here I am back in my nice radioactive apartment that ticks way too much. Look at that.
Here's a cry.
That's my apartment. Let me open the door.
He's crying.
My cat is crying.
Which cat?
You can hear him. Look at that. I'm doing a really bad job of pointing this camera. Right there. There we go. That's what I'm getting off my floor. It's the brick mostly. And then, as you can see, it's dropping again. So those are the readings I get. Alrighty. Well, anyhow, this has been Tom from anti-proton.com. If you have any more questions, let me know. I'll try to answer them. I think you're showing probably plenty of concern. I don't think it's unwarranted concern. But I think you need to also balance the quality of your life, how you live your life, your relationships, how things work, and generally speaking, you need to kind of maybe balance some of that with your fears of the radiation that's around you, because if you don't, then other things can destroy you too. Paranoia in itself can be almost as damaging as the things that you're afraid of. But being proactive and considering your environment and doing anything you can to make your life better and safer for your child is also, of course, a perfectly good idea too. So, a balance, I guess, is the best way to do it. There's my cat. My cat wants to say hi, apparently. Nikonami? Isn't that cat eyes in Japanese? Nikonami? Well, anyhow, my cat's name is Drist. Just like the character from the book series. Hello, Drist. Say hi to the camera. Say hi. No, there's a bug. Oh, God. Oh, my God, it flies. It's a bug. Oh, my God, it flies. See, he's like an anime cat. See? Alrighty. Well, anyway. Alright, bye-bye.